people that walk barefoot in the jungle for long periods of time, with their whole life, their toes spread out and their feet almost look like a hand.
But that's got to be like what our feet are supposed to be.
Probably right.
Right?
Yeah. Thick ass toes that actually have muscles in them that move.
That was it. After a whole year of being curious about barefoot shoes, and countless more years in pain and discomfort from crushing my feet in shoes that weren't even shaped like a human foot, that Joe Rogan clip sent me down the path of purchasing the Saguaro Vitality III, the cheapest barefoot shoe that reviewers were still recommending. Now, keep in mind that at the time I was a broke high school kid, so the fact that they cost so little was a huge selling point for me. Little did I know, this would be one of the best decisions I would ever make for my health, fitness, and wellness. Today, after 2 whole years of barefooting, I'm stronger, more stable, and less injury prone than I have ever been in my entire life. Over these past years, barefooting gave me the confidence I needed to pick up hiking and trail running, both of which I love to this day. Even though saying this makes me seem kind of goofy, I genuinely just love feeling the ground underneath me. Makes me feel more connected to nature when I'm out in wild places, while still being protected from harsh surfaces. I remember absolutely adoring my original pair of Vitalities. Going from my New Balances, which had a thick heel-sprung sole, a horrible pointy and constricting toe box, and absolutely zero ground feel, the Vitalities were an absolute game changer in my life and a truly unforgettable experience. My love and admiration for my first barefoot shoe was reflected in my review of them, which was one of the first videos on this channel, which some of you Bibbles veterans might still remember. Going off of the comments section, it looks like that video gave a lot of you guys a lot of value, but it looks and sounds like it was recorded on a potato. Plus, since then, I've amassed a lot more experience testing and reviewing many other barefoot shoe brands and models, so I'd love the opportunity to give you a more informed and accurate evaluation of how good this shoe really is. Am I so clouded by nostalgia that I'm remembering a cheap Amazon shoe as a magical product that nothing else could quite match? Or is there something truly special in Vitality 3? Well, I guess we'll never know, since my original pair is rotting somewhere in a landfill. What the? Today, the good people at Saguaro have sent me a fresh pair of Vitality 3s, so we can find out once and for all, is the Vitality 3 all that I remember it to be? Let's dive right in. Firstly, I want you guys to guess how much these cost. Most shoes in Australia cost around 200 kangaroo dollars. These guys go for only 66 kangaroo dollars, but you can get them for even cheaper if you follow my affiliate link in the description and use code Bibbles at checkout for 10% off. I believe that's around 40 US dollars, but I'll put the cute little eagle across the screen to tell you exactly how much that is. Now you might be asking, for that really low price, surely these things feel really cheap. Well, somehow that's not the case. I'm not sure how much child labor Saguaro used when building these shoes. Okay, we gotta cut that. Saguaro's budgeting must be very on point, because these, although not feeling like the highest quality shoes, still feel really decent. The outsole rubber feels completely solid and pretty much on par with what I'd expect on shoes that cost much more. The upper is made of this thin mesh material, which is probably the weakest part of the shoe, but still feels completely reasonable and substantial. Something I'm really happy to report is that Saguaro's sizing for this model is spot on. If you've ever ordered shoes online, you might be able to relate to the sadness of ordering a new shoe in your size, waiting maybe for weeks for it to arrive, being really excited to use it, and then it's somehow not your size. I'm really happy to report that that is not the case with these guys. I'm always around an 8.5 or size 9 in US sizing. That's what I got these guys in, and they are spot on. These are so soft and so flexible. If you know a thing or two about barefoot shoes, you know that flexibility is one of the core pillars that define them. And these rank among the best that I've ever tested in this factor. There's truly nothing rigid in the design of this shoe. Because of this mesh upper material, they almost feel more like a glove than a shoe. They adhere really well to the shape of your foot, while also not getting in the way of natural movement. Another aspect I think was done incredibly well was the placing of the padding. I think it's in all the right areas, and this shoe feels so snug and soft that half the time I don't even bother putting socks on. I just use them raw. Even though, by the way, they come with these really cool quick release pull cord laces, which I think are absolutely awesome and should be on more shoes. Another really cool feature of this shoe is the tread on the bottom. It's super chunky, super gnarly, and has fantastic traction that, in my testing, has actually outperformed the flagships of barefoot trail running. Now you might be wondering, Bibbles, that is a bold claim. How did you test this? I am very glad you asked. Let's end that experiment. Moreover, that super chunky performant trail tread doesn't sacrifice on weight. These guys weigh only 237 grams. That is a little bit lighter than most barefoot trail shoes. That means they feel more responsive and are less fatiguing over long sporting sessions. Let's talk about the width of the toe box, another essential pillar of barefoot shoes. A wide toe box is required to allow your foot to splay naturally and therefore grow in its natural, stronger shape. These things definitely satisfy that aspect. I have extremely wide feet, and I only noticed the sides of the shoe becoming slightly annoying and brushing up against my pinky toe after multiple hours of intense hiking. Moreover, my younger brother, who has more normally proportioned feet, said that they felt absolutely luxurious and that he could splay his toes as much as he liked and never really be bothered by the width. After really loving the width of the toe box on these guys, something that really surprised me is when I came to actually measuring these things. They came out with the worst score of length to width ratio of any barefoot shoe I have ever reviewed. A whole 8mm more narrow than other Saguaro shoes I've reviewed. So how the heck do these things feel so spacious? The secret lies in the upper material. Like I mentioned before, it's made of this super thin, super flexible mesh that, like the rest of the shoe, is incredibly malleable. This flexibility means that when you wear this shoe, the whole thing actually flexes and becomes much more wide than it really is, creating the illusion of width. So technically, these guys have a very terribly narrow toe box compared to many other barefoot shoes. And if the construction of this shoe was more rigid like those other shoes, I probably wouldn't even recommend these. But because of that unique construction and because they are so flexible and malleable to the shape of your foot, they actually behave like a barefoot shoe with a very wide toe box like you would want. Because of that aspect, I can say that these will be plenty wide for 99.99% of people. Trust me, I have very wide feet. If it fits me, it'll fit you. Unless you're literally Bigfoot. Unfortunately, it is not all sunshine and rainbows, and this is certainly not a perfect shoe. So let's dive right into the issues. Let's be honest here. The design of this shoe is super weird and polarizing. It's actually kind of grown on me since my original pair, but this shoe certainly doesn't really work for many environments. I really hated the fact that my original pair had toes on it because at the time I was going to high school and I didn't like being the weird kid with the toe shoes. This is also obviously not ideal for most social or work settings where a more aesthetic or professional looking shoe is required. While I remember really enjoying being able to actually feel the ground through a shoe for the first time with my original pair, now that I've used so many other barefoot shoes, I can tell you that the ground feel on these guys is actually fairly weak when compared to the competition. If this is your first barefoot shoe and you are a barefoot beginner, you will definitely feel a world of difference. Feeling the ground through this shoe, it will be like night and day compared to your traditional shoes where you're suspended on a giant cushion of foam. But if you have any further experience with barefoot shoes, you will definitely notice them lacking in this area. I also have some durability concerns. I know from long-term testing my original pair that after around 5 months of moderate use, the tread on stress areas such as where the big toe and heel strike the ground will be worn pretty much completely smooth. Now at the time I kind of marketed this as a plus for durability, but now that I have more experience, I know that that performance isn't all that great. Now there are a couple other construction choices that make me worried for the long-term durability. Like I mentioned, that mesh on the upper is quite thin and I would be worried about it potentially getting cut or torn. And something that I don't really like across the board with Saguaro shoes is that the stitching on the inside of the shoe is very big and exposed when compared to other brands. That makes me worried that just with daily use and a lot of friction around that area from your foot, that seam will just completely become undone and cause the shoe to start falling apart. Another problem is that this seam that runs all the way around the shoe is held together only by glue for most of its length. There is a small portion around the heel, so maybe a third of the length of the shoe, that is also connected by stitching, but on pretty much any other shoe you buy, there should be stitching along the whole length. And actually that is the cause of death of my original pair, when that glue around sort of the frontal area of the shoe just degraded and was pulled apart over time, and the upper and the side of the outsole began to separate. Now, it's certainly worth noting that how quickly this shoe wears is highly dependent on what you use it for. Because I trail run frequently, my shoes wear quick, and in comparison, my older brother's Vitality IV, which is a practically identical model that Saguaro used to sell, has not shown any signs of separation around that seam whatsoever. He's been using it for over 1.5 years and it is still going strong, though he does lead a much more sedentary lifestyle than I do. Okay, let's talk about this insole. Saguaro, I'm sorry I have to say this, I really like what you're doing, but there's no way around it. This thing is hot garbage. It's made of this super cheap, low quality polyester that is guaranteed to wear through in a matter of a few months. There will most definitely be big holes through it by that time, and you will need to replace it. Apart from being garbage quality, another issue that I complained about in my original review is the fact that this thing isn't even zero drop. If you're not a barefoot shoe enthusiast, zero drop pretty much means that the shoe and insole should be flat from heel to toe and not interfere with the natural shape of your foot at all. The theory goes that without a heel, arch support, or toe spring up front, the muscles of your foot can't relax and are forced to actually work, become stronger, and make your foot more capable and healthy. Continuing down this line, something that I didn't have the experience to notice on my first review of these is that it's not just the insole that isn't zero drop and technically not barefoot shoe worthy, but it's actually the whole shoe. Now this is pretty subtle. It's so subtle, in fact, that as a barefoot shoe beginner trying out my first shoe, I never noticed it, but I do now. This shoe has a very, very subtle heel and a tiny bit of an arch at the center of the shoe. As a beginner, you will not notice this, and this will still be a massive step towards barefoot. But this tiny issue technically means I can't even call this a barefoot shoe. It doesn't satisfy one of the three main pillars of what a barefoot shoe is. So who is this shoe actually for? Because of the weak ground feel and technically no zero drop, I can't really recommend this shoe for any seasoned barefooter. But it's not as simple as saying that this shoe is worthless. This shoe has some fantastic strong points, like the amazing comfort, flexibility, and comfortable toe box that we discussed before, as well as the awesome traction and trail performance. Honestly, if this shoe was zero drop, I would probably just recommend it as a cheap barefoot shoe for everyone. But because it's not, I think it's only really suitable for one purpose. I think this shoe is really made for that same purpose it served in my journey, as a transition shoe for someone who's anxious to make the leap to barefoot. The fact that these only cost 66 kangaroo dollars, 59 with code Bibbles in the description, makes these an absolutely unbeatable pair of shoes for people who are skeptical or unsure that they will like barefoot shoes, but still want to try them without spending potentially hundreds of dollars on a higher quality pair. The lack of true zero drop and the slight amount of support might actually be a plus for this purpose, making the transition from traditional cushion shoes to minimal barefoot shoes less jarring and might give you more time to develop the strength and mobility required for barefooting, potentially reducing the chance of injury. If a solid transition shoe with a standout design isn't what you're looking for, Saguaro also offers many options that have more mainstream designs to use for casual or formal, and are also genuinely barefoot that start at only $10 more than the Vitality. If what you're looking for is a genuinely stylish, well-built but still competitively priced shoe, look no further than the Saguaro Noble 1, a shoe that I've reviewed previously on this channel and I think is fantastic for more mainstream, dressy, casual or formal occasions. I'll leave a link to that video in the description. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching the whole thing. It truly does make a difference for this small channel. If you feel this video helped you out at all, consider leaving a like or maybe even subscribing. If you have any questions, requests for future videos, feedback, or just want to have a chat, make your way down to the comments and I will respond as soon as I can. If you want to continue your research on affordable barefoot shoes, you can check out this video I made on the Saguaro Noble 1, or alternatively, you can watch this other video YouTube thinks you'll like. With that said, keep moving, keep creating, and keep exploring. I'll see you next time.